Our next storyteller is Charles Woodin. Charles is here to tell his unique story about how he went from quitting every job to becoming a CEO. Here's Charles Woodin.
So I'm here today to tell you guys a story about how I leveraged quitting to go from being a Korean linguist in the United States Air Force to the CEO of an incubator and accelerator here in San Antonio. I'm also here to teach you a few lessons on how you can do this yourself. And it's timely because we're at the great resignation, as everybody knows right now. So you can learn these lessons and you can do it yourself. And so the first thing I want to talk about are 3 principles that you need to know in order to quit appropriately. And the first principle that everybody needs to know, and I'm sure you've heard this before, is it's not personal, it's business. Haven't you guys heard that before? Of course. And the way that I learned this lesson was when I was young. My dad ended up working for a company that did automotive parts. And right after NAFTA was passed, he was asked to move down to McAllen, Texas, and the whole family did, in order for him to set up a factory in Reynosa, Mexico. Set up that factory, got it up and running. And after 2 years of doing that, once the factory was good to go, they let him go. They didn't do anything to try to help him find another job. He ended up having to find it himself, and we ended up moving back to Michigan. And what that taught me is that a business itself is always going to make a decision that it needs to, no matter how it affects somebody personally. And so I stored that lesson away. The next lesson, principle that I want to tell you about is a principle I learned more recently. And this is from my current boss. And he had said that everybody deserves to be a valued member of an inspiring, everybody deserves to be a valued member of a winning team on an inspiring mission. And that rang really true for me. And it becomes a filter for you to use as you go through the different companies that you work at, is to make sure that all 3 of those boxes are checked. So make sure that you use that filter going forward. And the last lesson I also learned pretty recently from a good friend of mine, and he had shared with me that everybody has their last day at an organization. It just depends on whose terms you're leaving it as. And so this is your power. This is your strength. You can deserve, or you can decide when you want to leave a job and move on to the next thing. And so here, let me tell you my quick story. I grew up in a small town, Michigan, a small town sandwiched between Flint and Detroit, Michigan. I'm sure you guys know of those cities. While I was growing up, those were cities that were on a downward spiral. I wanted to get out of the town when I was young. So right after I graduated high school, I decided to join the military. I wanted to become a spy. And my sister had talked me into joining the Air Force and trying to become a linguist. What did that mean? I have no idea. But I signed up anyways. And I joined, took a test, and they ended up telling me I was going to be a Korean linguist. Go to training in beautiful Monterey, California for 2 years. After that, I end up going and spending the majority of my time in Omaha, Nebraska. Sexy, right? Everything I wanted to be. And then for the next 4 years while I was serving in Omaha, Nebraska, being a Korean linguist, mind you, guess where I spent most of my time? The Middle East, of course. This is in the middle of Iraqi freedom, and it's also the time of enduring freedom. So I spent the majority of my time in the Middle East doing nothing to do with what I did. And one of the things I realized in my time spending majoritively in the Middle East was that this wasn't an inspiring mission for me. And this wasn't, I didn't feel like a valued member of the team either. And so I decided I was going to quit. But before I did, they sent me away to become an instructor for 2 years. So the last 2 years in the military, I spent being an instructor, which was one of the most amazing jobs I could tell you about. It was so rewarding to see these young kids leaving the training that I went through in Monterey to be taught by me and how to become an effective military person. And that was so rewarding. But I still had committed. I was going to leave. And while I was in that last 2 years, one thing I did realize was something about me that I really liked, which was that I love to fix people's issues. So if I had a student in front of me that had an issue, it became my duty to fix that issue for them so that they could become better going forward. And I kept that as well, along with those 3 filters I mentioned. So I quit the military after 8 years in. And I ended up deciding I was going to go to school. If I like to fix issues, what should I become? I should become an engineer. So I moved down here to San Antonio, started going to school at UTSA. And one of the things I realized quite quickly at the age of nearly 30 is that I'm 10 years older than everybody else in this room. I don't feel like I'm a part of a team at all. I don't really know what my mission is other than to get a degree, which didn't seem all that inspiring, to be honest with you. And so I quickly realized this is really not the place for me. But it was a really hard decision to quit because I just left this military job in order to do this. I left a career, and it was a really difficult thing to do. And so I decided I needed something else to distract me. And so I got a part-time job at Apple. I ended up working in a retail store. So those of you who came in and said, I can't unlock my phone, I don't know what's going on, I was the guy who helped you. And I joined this, direction where I was going to become a genius. Everybody, who wouldn't love to be called a genius, right? And so I decided at that point, this is the jumping off point. I'm quitting school. I'm going all in at Apple. I felt for sure Apple was on an inspiring mission. I felt very valued. They had a path for me. I knew what direction I was heading in, and that team was winning, no doubt. Apple's always doing great, and if you see, I'm wearing everything Apple. But anyways, so I jumped ship, joined Apple, fell in love. I ended up working at Apple for a total of 3 years. And while I was there, I was on that pathway to genius. And then I realized that there was another pathway with Apple. And that was working with businesses, because Apple not only supplied and helped people fix their products, but they also supplied that to businesses. And one of the things that I realized was while I was working with businesses was that their one problem affected several people. And so for a person who got a high off of fixing others' issues, fixing hundreds of people's issues with one issue was amazing. So sign me up. Well, how do I do more of this? And so it's what I did. And so I was a consultant for Apple doing business-to-business sales for 2 years, and I loved every minute of it. I never thought I would leave Apple. I knew what my next step was until one fateful day. An old boss of mine at Apple had walked in the door, and he had said, hey, you have to come check out this place in downtown San Antonio called Geekdom. And I was like, sure, whatever, just out of pure gratitude for the guy. I came down here, and I went and I saw the building, and I heard the story of what Geekdom was doing. And one of the things that unlocked with me is something I'd completely forgotten about, was growing up where I grew up. I grew up sandwiched between Flint and Detroit, 2 cities on a downward spiral. And here I was standing in a building, hearing about this mission that a guy who's now my boss, Graham Weston, had to change the direction of downtown San Antonio. How more inspiring can you be for a kid who grew up around 2 cities that were going down, to be a part of a city going up and be a part, an integral part of that? So I decided I was going to quit the one job I never thought I would leave, which was Apple, and I joined the Geekdom team. And I was just a lowly salesperson. But after 2 years, I had the ability to step up and become the CEO, and it's been one of the most rewarding jobs that I've ever had, and I can't imagine a better job than what I have right now. So that's my quick journey. It took less than 10 years to accomplish all of that. And the one thing that I want to leave you with today as I conclude are, again, to revisit those 3 filters. Number 1, it's not personal, it's business. We all know it. Figure out what your own story is to remember it. Also remember that everybody deserves to be a valued member of a winning team on an inspiring mission. And lastly, don't forget that you control the power. Everybody has their last day at an organization, and you decide when that's going to happen. So the last thing I'll say is just remember to join or to go for your passions. Don't look back, jump in, and keep moving forward. Thank you.